It might seem odd that I'm beginning with Season 2 of this series. It might even make you wonder if you missed it last month. No, this is the first time I've done this. The reason is that the show Mystery Science Theater 3000, called MST3K for short, or MST for even shorter, basically had 3 starts to it. If you're unfamiliar, the premise of the show is 3 characters watch a bad movie and heckle it the entire time.
To catch an ant, you've got to look like an ant and think like an ant.
This is obviously nothing new. The idea of how to frame it, though, was thanks to its star Joel Hodgson, a notable upcoming comic who was disappointed with the whole celebrity engine out in Hollywood and New York, and so was willing to develop a show for a local station KTMA in Minnesota. But Joel didn't want the show to be a one-note thing. He had the idea of including skits and props. Joel is a very creative person, and that includes making things. So to frame the whole thing, he conceived that his character was a schlub isolated on a satellite by 2 mad scientists who are conducting a horrific long-term experiment on him by forcing him to watch bad movies. To help him endure this hellish existence, cannibalizing parts from the ship gave him the materials to make robots, realized in the show as puppets, and this nature thus explaining their rather cobbled-together looks. Servo and Crow were made to join him in the movie-watching experience, while Gypsy managed the ship's functions and the camera, Cambot, observed everything.
A robot cannot harm a human being.
Okay, and the second robotic law?
A robot cannot, through inaction, cause a human being to come to harm.
And the third?
Give a hoot, don't pollute.
The show was a local hit, so after 1 season, the show was picked up by the Comedy Channel, which would later morph into Comedy Central. The KTMA series looked like local television. The leap to Comedy Central moved the show a bit more to at least acceptable basic cable, but it was still a work in progress during the first season. When the first season ended, Weinstein, one of the scientists and the voice of Servo, left, replaced by Frank as the new assistant down in the mad scientist lair called Deep 13, and Kevin Murphy as Servo's voice. Given also that the Comedy Channel wasn't shown in all that many markets during its first season, and that the creators of the show felt that Season 1 was more of a learning experience, and so asked that repeats would be from the later episodes instead of the first season, it basically means that for a substantial number of fans, Season 2 was the launch of the show. It had the same consistent tone, only 1 cast change for, most of its run on Comedy Central, and was the earliest period being continually broadcast. So as odd as it might seem, I'll be using this as the starting point for the show.
But as far as you space monkeys are concerned, I'm the new marshal in town. That's right, I'm the god. I'm the god! May I take your order, please?
So Season 2 kicked off with 2 cast changes, essentially, but also spruced up the look of things as well, and it was a chance to further experiment with stuff. Tom Servo's haircut, for instance, that replaced his dome with a small pillar. Some things were still holdovers from the first season, though. The films were often quite short, so sometimes things were needed to help fill out the runtime, and this was filled out with film serials. In Season 2, that meant The Phantom Creeps, starring Bela Lugosi as, try not to be too surprised, a mad scientist. This was because the show had been focused on bad movies, and generally this was seen as old B-movies, and naturally old B-movies were science fiction or horror. So the serials were also in the same vein. But in Season 2 they began branching out and settling on just bad, period, for their films. Exploitation flicks such as Side Hackers provided some great fodder. A comedy like Catalina Caper was obviously much more challenging for them. But the openness to new possibilities extended as well to the serials when the idea was not do a serial, but rather just a film short instead. And that was in late Season 2. In fact, the last one they did, X Marks the Spot.
Perhaps
you can't see it from here, but my torso is fused to a block of granite.
But most of the drivers and pedestrians who were involved didn't break all the rules.
Just something.
Just once in a while, they were careless or inconsiderate.
Or they didn't want to live in New Jersey anymore.
It was thanks to mid-Season 2 that the staple MST3K ending stinger was created. The film Rocket Attack USA had this weird moment in the middle.
Help me.
It was just so odd. Clearly he probably does need help, but he doesn't seem all that anxious to really have it. Anyway, from this, the stinger was born for MST3K, and would last for the entire rest of the show's run. The standout episode of Season 2 was the penultimate episode, Godzilla vs. Megalon. Nuclear testing underground pisses off the goofily dressed people of Seatopia, whose leader looks like Tim Conway's Dorf character. They send out their thugs, including Oscar Wilde and Bluto from Popeye, to steal a robot being built by a guy who lives with his secret agent-style best friend and his kid brother who wears tiny shorts and possibly nylons. To clinch the deal, Megalon is sent to blow the crap out of Japan, so Godzilla comes and beats the crap out of him instead.
Try not to get sucked into the vortex of hell, Billy!
Not only is the film just plain goofy, including villains who weirdly resemble characters and people from Western popular culture, but the presence of a robot and various monsters make it a film made to be mocked. What puts it over the top are the skits. This is the episode that's the origin of Rex Dart Eskimo Spy, actually. And culminating in the wonderfully mean-spirited Orville Popcorn sketch that was mocking the commercials featuring Redenbacher and his grandson Gary that were running around this time.
Why do you always do this? I hate you! I've always hated you! What happened to my real father anyway?
He's in the poorhouse where I replaced him, just like I'm going to replace you if you don't shut up and do as I say.
Honorable mention for Season 2 goes to Rocketship XM, the first of the season and thus effectively launching 3.0 of the show. 5 astronauts, Lloyd Bridges, a cowardly astronomer, an ice queen, the Walt Disney look-alike leader, and a Texan who might have gotten on board by mistake, given how he makes Trip on Enterprise look like the guy in the Most Interesting Man in the World commercials. They take the first rocket to go to the moon. They manage to screw this up, though, and fly to Mars instead. Half of them die, and the rest perish when they run out of fuel and crash. Lloyd hits on the chick the entire trip.
I must have turned the levers off when I blacked out.
But at what speed? You know the consequences of a body moving with unchecked velocity in free space.
We're our own grandparents?
It's not only landmark, but it's also a good episode with plenty of gags, one of the more ambitious inventions with the BGC-19, and makes clear to the audience that the best brains do not find Gallagher to be even slightly funny. Note, when Joel was in California once doing a gig, Gallagher had gone through Joel's props without his permission, and was very insulting and rude towards them afterwards, hence the animosity, although the rest of the brains seemed to agree because of Gallagher's comedy style. Season 2 was a mere 13 episodes, but it was a strong one and led to the following 4 seasons, all expanding to 24 episodes. Next month I'll take a look at Season 3.